A growing crisis fueled by conflicts, the climate emergency, pandemics, and the energy and food crisis, with a message that it was these most vulnerable of peoples who are the most impacted by this vortex of catastrophes.
The Russian invasion of Ukraine has driven the fastest and largest displacement witnessed in decades. Some 14 million people have been forced from their homes since the 24th of February. Ukrainians are about to face one of the world's harshest winters in extremely difficult circumstances. Humanitarian organizations have dramatically scaled up their response, but much more must be done, starting with an end to this senseless war. Unfortunately, we see the opposite, and the destruction caused by strikes at civilian infrastructure, which happens as we speak, is quickly making the humanitarian response look like a drop in the ocean of needs.
A recent uptick in brutal attacks in the DRC has added more than 200,000 people to the over 5.5 million displaced in that country. In Myanmar, some 500,000 people have been displaced in the first 6 months of this year, with over 1 million Rohingya refugees already across the border in Bangladesh. While Grandi warned that protracted crises like Afghanistan and Syria were not only fading from media attention, but also being failed by global inaction. He also pointed to the situation in Ethiopia, where close to 1 million people have been displaced in the first half of 2022.
UNHCR is trying to be present wherever there is forced displacement. We are with the people of Ethiopia. More than 850,000 were displaced in the first half of this year. The recent surge in the conflict is having an even more devastating impact on civilians. Please be united in urging a positive outcome of talks between the parties in South Africa, as their failure would, no doubt, bring more death, destruction, and displacement, and further restrict our already very limited ability to reach those in need in Tigray and other regions.
While climate change is displacing people across North Africa, the Sahel, and the Horn of Africa, where famine looms.
There are many hotspots affected by this spiral. I'm extremely worried about the situation throughout the Sahel, for example, where the convergence of climate change, poverty, and weak governance with the action of armed groups and the often brutal reaction of governments have already displaced 3 million people, including, increasingly, to coastal states like yours, Mr. President, as well as to North Africa and Europe. It is therefore clear that responses to climate change must take into account both its link to conflict and the displacement it causes, dimensions which I hope will be in clearer focus than in the past at the upcoming COP27 and 28.
And as the refugee and displacement crisis only grows, UNHCR faces a major funding gap despite record levels of income, as appeals for strengthening peace building only grows. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.